I'm so excited to share that through Executive Endurance Coaching, I've officially joined Never Second's Coach and Nutritionist program. Never Second is a science driven performance nutrition brand built specifically for endurance athletes. I've personally been using their fueling system for years in my own training, and I love how simple, precise their approach to carbohydrate fueling is for runners, cyclists, triathletes, you name it. And today, if you want to try Never Second for yourself, our listeners can get 15% off by using the code GRIT15 at checkout. GRIT 15 at checkout. Just head to never2.com and start fueling your training with intention. This episode is brought to you by Koya Performance for Life. Koya combines wearable technology with behavioral science to help you unlock more energy and perform at the highest level. Their coaches have worked with Olympians, Super Bowl MVPs, World Series champions, and other elite performers. Their 12-week program focuses on sleep, exercise, nutrition, mindset, and recovery, blending biometric data from wearables like Aura, Whoop, or Garmin with one-on-one coaching from a team that includes a dietitian, sleep coach, movement specialist, and mental performance coach. Grit Files listeners today receive 33% off the program using the code AGRANDOFF. Visit koya.life to learn more. Welcome back to the Grit Files, where we explore the stories behind extraordinary people who had faced adversity, embraced challenges, and built lives of purpose and impact. Today's guest is someone many sports fans know as the longtime voice of the Baltimore Ravens. And for those that can't see, I'm representing. For decades, Gerry Sandusky has been one of the most respected broadcasters in sports, covering some of the biggest moments, biggest personalities, and biggest stages in professional football. But Gerry's story goes far beyond broadcasting. He's an author, speaker, executive coach, and someone who has experienced firsthand what it means to navigate challenges that are completely outside of your control. At one point in his career, Gerry found himself facing an unexpected and deeply personal obstacle when people confused him with another public figure whose name became associated with one of the most notorious scandals in sports history. It's a powerful example of resilience, character, and the ability to stay grounded when circumstances threaten to define you. Today, we'll talk about that journey, the lessons he's learned from a lifetime around elite performers, why he believes coaching and mentorship are so important for leaders, and how his perspective on success, purpose, and legacy continues to evolve in his newest chapter of life as a grandfather. Gerry's story is one of grit, grace, and growth, and I'm excited for you all to hear it. Please welcome Gerry Sandusky.
Great to be with you. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
having me, Laura.
Gerry, I'm so excited to finally have you. Gonna start with a little bit of a big one. I know we all locally and also nationally know you as the voice of the Baltimore Ravens. You've spent decades, like we talked about a little couple moments ago, telling other people's stories. But what's a part of your own story that you think most people probably don't know?
I probably don't know that you couldn't get where I got you because that wasn't a path that was defined. And the
Right?
only reason I got there is I didn't know that wasn't possible.
Yeah.
So let me take you back to the late 80s, actually mid 80s when I graduated college
Yeah.
and didn't really know what I wanted to do in life. I was a finance and economics major at Towson University and started to interview for some jobs and two trends emerged. One, I didn't get any of the jobs, and two, none of the jobs seemed attractive to me.
Darn it.
So I was talking with a career counselor. She said, if you could do anything in the world and you knew you couldn't fail, what job would you want? I said, thought about, I'd host the Tonight Show. She said,
Love it.
well, did you think about working in TV? I said, I hadn't necessarily thought about that career path. I thought, went to college, got a degree, became a businessman. So I moved to South Florida where my parents lived. My dad was a coach for the Dolphins, and I knocked on TV stations' doors and I got an internship at a TV station, unpaid. And they had no real program. They said, but you're welcome to come hang out if you want.
Right.
So I did, and gradually learned some skills. But like a year and a half went by, and I really am not making any money, and I don't really have a defined career path. And I would come home at night, and I would read the 11 o'clock news scripts that I would take with me from the studio, and I would practice in my bathroom reading them to teach myself how to read
Yeah.
like a broadcaster. Well, I'm driving home this one. It's about a year and a half into it. My friends are getting married, their careers are taking off, and here I am living in my parents' house, making no money as an unpaid intern. And I'm thinking, that's it. I'm throwing in the towel. I'm going to give up. I'm going to quit. I'll thank my parents in the morning, drive back to Baltimore, and get a regular job and have a regular life. And I get home that night, and on my desk is a white gooseneck lamp with a red bow and a card on it. And I open it up, And the card says, I know how hard you're working on your dreams. I hope this shines a little light on your future. Love, Mom.
Oh my gosh. I want to hug your mom.
Well, needless to say, I went back to the station that day and I went back for 40 more years. And
Oh my
had it not been
gosh.
for that one moment, that one thoughtful gesture, none of this ever happens.
Yeah. It's such an attribute to, I'm a parent as well. I have an 8-year-old, and you really don't know how big those little moments are. It's so important to do that because they don't know, what's ahead of them. They don't have any life experience. So to have that little nudge to be like, "Hey, on the days that you don't believe in you, I believe in you, and I'm here, whatever that looks like. Here's the light." I love that.
That makes all the difference in the world. And so,
Yes.
look, nobody makes it alone. I
Right.
don't care who
Oh, it
you are.
takes
I don't
an
care what you've
entire
done.
village.
Yep. Nobody makes it alone.
Yeah. You had mentioned that your dad was an NFL player and coach. Just
Correct.
okay.
Yep.
So what expectations did you feel, and how did you carve out your own identity separate from that?
So I was the last of five kids, youngest of four boys, and football was obviously the main theme in our house. But I grew up playing basketball. I didn't play football as a
You were the
kid. I played
different
football
one.
until I got to
Love
college.
it.
So I just wanted to do my own thing.
Yeah.
But because I grew up in sports culture, I learned all the, the discipline, the hard work, the meritocracy. If you want it, you got to go earn it.
Yeah.
That applies sport to sport. And then, basketball became my own thing. But the big blessing about growing up in that kind of environment is I was around NFL players my whole life. By
Yeah.
the time I was like 15, 16, when most guys were having these delusions of being a pro athlete, I could recognize I did not have that gear. I was a
You're like,
good
that's
athlete,
absolutely not me.
but I am not. If I'm going to make it in the NFL, it's not going to be as a player.
Right.
And if I'm going to make it in pro sports, it's not going to be as a player because those guys have something I don't have. And so that kept me from being wildly off track, which a lot of young people are. Every young athlete in the country thinks he or she is playing pro sports, when in fact it's 1% of 1%.
Yeah. I love that you brought that up because Morgan, Morgan Knox, as
Hmm.
she produces the podcast for us, and you've had interactions with Morgan, so you know her well. But this is a topic that we talk about quite a bit, where what do you do with the individual who really wants to be a part of a sport that they might not necessarily be good at? Like, what, as a parent, especially, how do you
Yeah.
navigate the conversation where you're like, I don't know. Like, I know they want to be part of this football world. I know they want to be a part of this basketball world, but I'm not sure athletically if they're there. How do you navigate that conversation? And this is such a perfect example of, hey, just because athletically you might not align to that sport, if it's or anything, there's still a way for you to find a purpose or involvement in it that is different from what it may traditionally look like, but
Right.
you can still be a part of it. So I love that you were able to kind of easily recognize that and navigate it in
Yeah.
a different way because a lot of people just kind of scrap it and they're like, well, I guess I can't be involved in the sport then.
Yeah,
So
you don't have to be the left tackle to be a part of a football team, and you don't have to be the shooting guard to be part of a basketball team, and you
yeah,
don't have to be the star to be a part of a volleyball team,
yeah,
or the pitcher to be on a softball team. There are many roles, and usually when you drill down, what you find is that what people really enjoy about the sport is the camaraderie,
yeah,
the unselfishness, the sense of a shared purpose,
mhm,
of defined goals, of measured progress. Sports gives us something that we tend to lose a little bit in life, in that, you know, take football, for example, 3 hours start to finish. You know the winner, you know the loser, you have all
right,
the. Well, life doesn't work that way for the most part. Like,
right,
you're a mother of an 8-year-old. You don't get 3 hour increments to tell you, man, you won today, mom. Like, it's not that clean cut. The lines aren't
right,
that sharply drawn. And so
right.
that's the attractiveness, I think, for a lot of people being in a world of sports. And you don't have to be the person who's wearing the uniform to be an important part of that team.
Yeah. Um, Another thing that we talk about too is, and this is not to say that you were sitting on the bench by any means, you were doing
Oh no,
something
in
different.
college, I played two sports in college. I was very much on the bench.
But so often, the glue of the team is that person that's sitting on the bench and they're observing everybody else and they're picking up on everybody's idiosyncrasies and what jazzes this person up that, isn't the same for this person. And they are the ones that keeps everybody pumped up when everybody's having those low moments. So they're often not the star player that everybody's like, well, if they're not here, we're not going to win. That glue, and at least in my observation, is the person that's sitting on the bench. So I think that that's an important subject too to let people be aware of is like, hey, even if you don't get any play time, you can be the glue for something big.
Well, the same thing works in business too,
Yeah.
because in any business you can't have 46 stars. There
Right.
have to be role players. There have to be
Yep.
bench players. There have to be people that that don't step into the spotlight that make it possible for the organization to shine. And
Exactly.
sports is a great metaphor for business. Because they're
Yep.
both
Oh,
team
I totally
sports.
agree. Totally agree. Was there a point where you realized broadcasting wasn't just a job, but you were meant to do it? And it sounds like maybe I answered my question because it happened kind of early as you were reading these scripts, but was there a defining moment where you were like, this is my thing. This is what I'm made to do?
Yeah, I think it's not so much of a defining moment. Is it's more like you kind of settle into a feeling of not even comfort, it's confidence. It's a
Right.
feeling of I know I can handle this. You don't
Yeah.
start off that way. You start off, you're in 12 feet of water and you can't
Mm.
swim, and you got to figure it
Yeah.
out fast, and you're splashing around, you're thrashing around, and you're doing it in front of everybody.
Yeah.
That's the thing, and you're failing publicly in
Yeah.
broadcasting. Everybody does when you start out, and you get to a point where it all starts to feel like you're in the flow
Yeah.
when you're on a broadcast and you have that feeling of no matter what comes up, I'm going to be able to handle that. That's when you start to feel like, all right, I belong in this space.
Yeah. That's a phrase that I use often to people in my coaching is like when you get to flow state, that's when you know. So it's funny that she even mentioned that word.
And flow state,
Um,
flow state is something that scientifically has been explored. I'm a big fan of flow because we've all
yeah.
had it. And sports is one of those places where you first experience flow for most people.
Yeah.
You don't have to wait till you're 40 years old in business to experience flow. If you may have experienced that as a 9-year-old on the baseball field.
Yeah.
And so the cool part about flow is the latest science that I've read about shows that in order to get to flow, the challenge has to be at roughly 4% higher than your skill set.
Yeah.
You don't get the flow because you're better than the challenge. That's where you get mistakes because you start
Yes.
to coast. So you have to always keep challenging yourself to new mountains, new horizons, and new opportunities that are a little bit above your skill set.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of the mark of a professional who recognizes you never arrive. You're always climbing.
Yes. And growth and comfort really can't coexist all that well. Like you're going to feel, and
Wow.
that's that, you and I will get into this a little later about our, similarities in coaching. But that's something that I talk to my clients about a lot is like, look, it's going to feel uncomfortable typically right before you make the move that's going to be the best one for you.
Yeah.
This whole thought that you're going to feel really comfy in something that's going to be changing your entire life trajectory is a lie. It's going to feel uncomfortable. And that's usually a sign, at least in my experience, that you're about to do something amazing.
Yeah,
Um,
I always tell people that your greatest success is on the other side of your biggest fear.
yes, yes, it is so true.
Comfort's a
Um,
wonderful thing for vacation, but it's not a
right.
wonderful thing for growth. Yeah.
I completely agree. And I've gotten to where I'm actually, funny enough, I'm very comfortable being uncomfortable because I know that I'm learning something. And once you get to that acceptance part of, hey, this is going to be uncomfortable, but it's going to lead me to something great, then I think it kind of changes your nervous system around it a little bit because you know that it's associated with something good versus something that's going to blow up in your face. And it might a little bit, but it will also teach you something. So I think when we let go of this whole thought that it's going to feel great the whole time, it's a little easier to accept.
It really is. And you hit acceptance is the key thing. So I teach this model called the change continuum, and the front
Yeah.
end of it is all reactive.
Yep.
It's disbelief and denial, emotional peak, uncertainty. You kind of get lost in the woods. Acceptance puts you on the proactive side of the
Yep.
continuum where you don't have to like it. You just have to accept things have changed.
Yeah.
Something has changed. Once you accept that,
Yep.
then you can take control of it.
Yeah. A big one for me is this whole idea of fear, because you mentioned that the biggest things that happen for you are on the other side of your biggest fear. And that's a big one for me because I'm like, we as a culture, as human beings, allow so much fear of things that have not happened yet to dictate every decision in our life. So a big one that I really nail down for people is fear stands for false evidence appearing real. It is
Yep.
something that you are creating in your mind that may or may not happen, but why act as though it's already happened if it hasn't yet? So let's teach it, let's treat it as a thing that may or may not be real. And
Yeah.
who knows, this could be something amazing. So that's a big one for me too. Want to talk a little bit about grit, family, loss. You often talk about family being at the center of your life. So how has loss, as it pertains to your family, shaped the way that you approach your career and relationships?
So when I was 19, when I was 17, my 19-year-old brother, who was a star football player at Tulsa, died suddenly from sepsis.
This was Joe, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
my brother Joe, and he had the pro football gene. He was going to be a pro football player. He was,
yeah,
I mean, he was special physically, emotionally, spiritually. He was the whole package.
yeah,
And so, I'm 17. I'm just starting my senior year in high school, and my world blows up, and my family goes through this tremendous, just crushing blow of just losing this magnificently wonderful, loved person, and it just crumbles everything for everybody. And the searing image that I still have is there were thousands of people at Joe's funeral. He was so
yeah,
popular, and it was such a tragedy. It's people who didn't even know him poured out to support our family, and I greatly appreciated all of that. But the time comes when people leave.
yeah,
The service is over, and the cars drive away, and at the end there's five or six people left with their hand on the casket,
yeah,
and that searing image taught me live your life around those people.
yeah,
The rest are wonderful, but they're gonna leave.
yeah.
So figure out who your five or six are and live your life around them.
Yeah. That's a big one that I teach my daughter now, or I'm trying to teach her now. At a young age, it's hard because they just think the more friends, the better, right? That's what the society thinks.
Sure.
But there is this whole shedding process that happens as you grow, and people often associate that as a negative thing, but I think it's actually a beautiful thing because you are getting closer and closer to those five people who do have the hand on the casket at the end. Um, and I think that that's something that a lot of people need to kind of hold close as they're navigating some of these chapters in their life is that, you're not always going to be everybody's best friend. And some of the decisions that you make are going to cause you to lose a few. And the world wants us to believe that that's a sad thing and that's a bad thing, but it's getting you closer to the people that know you the best. And you're right, all of these people are so important. There's like a train reference that people make where you're on the train the entire time, and there are people that get on, and there are people that get off, and there are people that stay. And
Correct.
all of them have a place. But for sure, that image of the five is really important for people to keep in the back of their mind because that is what it's going to be at the end is there's a
And I
few.
would say it's not about being judgmental. You're not saying, well, you're not
No,
worthy. But it's just
not
about
at
the
all.
recognition that some people have a very temporary role in your life,
Yes.
and some people have a more permanent role in your life. And just most pain comes from confusing the two.
Yes, I love that so much. Many people chase success. What did your family teach you about significance versus success?
So in 1969, my dad's an assistant coach for the Baltimore Colts, and they play in Super Bowl III against the New York Jets.
Mhm.
And the Colts are heavy favorites. The Packers won the first two Super Bowls. It's presumed the Colts are going to win the third. I'm in second, third from third grade, I think, and I'm going to be the first kid in third grade who's at Immaculate Heart of Mary Elementary School whose father has
Yeah.
a Super Bowl ring. This is a given. I'm so excited. Well, the Colts lose the Super Bowl. The Jets pull off the biggest upset in
Oh,
NFL history.
heartbroken.
And so I come back to school the very next day. The first thing that happens, I get in a fight with somebody who's criticizing my dad, the Colts, and so the next day we're driving to school, and I'm getting out of the car, and my dad looks at me, he goes, "Give me one of these," and his really sharp whistle he had, and he pats the passenger seat next to him. And when he did this, you knew you were going to have a talk. He was
Right.
going to talk, and you were going to listen.
Yeah.
And he said something that stuck with me my whole life. He said, "Look, because the Colts lost, you're about to discover there's a lot of jerks in the world. But you can't punch all the jerks without becoming the biggest jerk.
Oh,
Am I clear?"
love that.
And that was it. That was the conversation, and it stuck with me my whole life. And that success is sometimes how you handle losing. It's who you
Oh,
are when the
yes.
circumstances outside of you, which are outside of your control, how you operate, how you move through that, how you conduct yourself in those environments have as much to do with success as any other metric that's out there.
Yeah. There's an elite runner, Rachel Entrekin, she just mentioned something lately that I loved. That she said, I wanted to see, she's a long endurance runner, and she just finished a 250 miler in one.
Oh,
Um, and they asked her, why do you do this? And she was like, I want to see if I like the person that I become when things get hard. And I love that so much because I think it's similar to this, thought of failures. How do you handle yourself when things don't go your way? That often is a deeper sign of character than when things work out, because it's easy to be the most amazing person when things work out in your favor. But more often than not in the world, they're not going to. So how are you going to stand back up and represent yourself? And navigate the world. So I love that. That's such a great conversation for a dad to have with a second or third grader at the time.
yeah. And he
Um,
guided me through much of my life, and it's just stuck with me because look, you're right. Ease and comfort are wonderful things,
right,
but they're relative things. And
right.
and and I'm not one of those people who thinks everybody has to have a hard life and you have to grind through. Matter of fact, I
Yeah,
don't even like the word grinding. But it's
yeah,
just the reality is you're going to have tough times.
yeah.
And no matter what you do individually, tough times are going to visit your life.
Right. What are you going to do? Just punch somebody in the face every time you have a hard
Correct.
time?
Correct. Yeah, you just can't do that.
Yeah. Um, gonna do a hard pivot into the one that everybody kind of knows about, but maybe
Sure.
they don't. So let's bring it to light. There was a period where people weren't seeing Gerry Sandusky, they were seeing a name. What was it like to suddenly become associated with a scandal you had absolutely nothing to do with? So, for those that might not know what we're referring to, want to give us a little bit of history of
Sure.
who you were getting confused with?
So November 5th, 2011, Penn State coach, former Penn State defensive coordinator, Gerry Sandusky
With a
is
J.
arrested. Jerry with a J is arrested and charged on 34 counts of child molestation. And literally in an instant, the way people think about me dramatically changes. They
Yeah,
hear the name. I had neighbors who were like, "Oh my God, is that our Jerry?" The Ravens players are wondering who it is. Everybody's wondering who it is. I'm standing there, guys. He's in jail. I'm standing here. It's not, we're not related. And
right.
so it was wild. So my wife and I are out at dinner one night. We're like at a sports bar or something, and I'm looking around. There's dozens and dozens of screens. And I realize on every screen, either on the video or on the lower third, every 2 seconds is something about this story. And it was like that for months. And so every time I meet somebody, I would call it the Jerry flinch. They'd be like, "Oh, hey, I'm Gerry Sandusky." And they visibly flinch and pull back.
Yeah.
So my wife was the one who recognized, look, we're gonna have to come up with a mantra here. You need to double down on the letter G. And so the 6 word mantra just became, "Hey, Gerry Sandusky, Jerry with a G, no relation." Boom. People felt a whole lot better about it.
Love it.
But look, I understood the confluence was amazing, and I understood the confusion. He coached football. I broadcast football.
Right.
He has a son named John, who's a scout for the Cleveland Browns. My dad, John, played for the Cleveland Browns.
Gosh, I didn't even realize that
Yeah,
connection.
he's from
Oh,
Pennsylvania. My dad's from Pennsylvania. Like so we had all of these like near misses
yes.
as
Oh
connection
my
points.
God.
And I had actually done a story with him one time, many, many years ago when I was working as a young reporter in Miami. Miami was playing Penn State in the Fiesta Bowl. And so we flew up to Penn State and did a preview story. And I actually did a story with him
Oh my God.
and had a line or two about the shared name. It was just a lighthearted thing, no big deal. Well, and then all these years later, this thing comes back. And because I'd spent my whole career in broadcasting, I knew this was not a 2 minute thing. I
I
knew
was
this
just
wasn't
going
going
to
to
ask
change
that. You
with a
read my
news
mind.
cycle. It's 16 years, it's 15 years later, and it's still the first thing people think and hear. I'm actually like when I go coach or consult or speak or host a seminar,
Yeah.
I'm one of the most Googled people out there because people see the name of the host or the speaker and they're like, what?
I have
And
to tell people that when I was letting people know that I was going to be having a
right.
conversation with you today, I had to preface it with not that one.
So imagine that for 16 years.
Right.
Every turn, everywhere you go,
Yeah.
we check into a hotel, and sometimes the person behind the desk would say, "Would you like to check in under an assumed name?" Like, no, I'm fine. I'm good.
Yeah.
And
Oh
so then the
my
big,
gosh.
the big push was everybody giving me the advice, well, you just change your name.
Hmm.
And that comes back into the conversation of what is success is not just what you're willing to do,
Right.
it's what you're not willing to do.
Yeah.
Because to go back to those stories of, hands on the casket, my mom has died, my dad has died, my brother died. I'm going to see them again one day. I believe that.
Right. You don't want to see him as Adam,
Well,
Adam
exactly.
Smith.
And when you face your truth, it's like, okay, when things got hard, did I fold or did I stand?
Yes.
And that to me is one of the defining, questions of anybody's life. And I'm not saying that judgmentally. I'm not here to judge you, but that's
Right.
I had to do that because I knew that was a principle that I had to stand or fall on.
Right. And that would have absolutely been the easy way out, but also it
Back
would,
to easy, back to easy.
yes, and it would essentially wipe away any of the good associated with your name, your actual
Yep.
name. So yeah, I think that that goes back to kind of a larger symbol of like, what are you willing to endure for the things that you want in your life? This could be easy. You could absolutely erase this slate clean, but that means everything, even the good stuff.
Excellent point. Excellent point. And as we've talked, life isn't all easy. It isn't all hard. It's a mix of all these things. And
Yeah.
so, it just becomes the fabric of who you become and what you stand for and what you're willing to do and not willing to do. And that was something that when we were navigating that as a family, we were going through that. My kids are getting harassed at school. My wife's running into
Yeah.
all kind of issues with people she knows, and it was a really tough time in our family. And so I gathered us together for a family meeting, and I shared the story about my father in Super Bowl three.
Yeah.
Because my kids were getting a couple of scrapes, and I said, look, you can't punch every jerk in the world without becoming the biggest jerk. And so that lesson my dad taught me in 1969 came back all those years later when I was a father. And then I reinforced it with there are victims in this story,
Mhm.
but we are not the victims, and we will
Yeah.
not act like victims.
Yeah.
And so, it gave at a young formative point in their life, it gave my children something to, I hope, build, for their life when other adversities visit them.
Yeah, I love that. I really do love the story with your dad. I might need to use that one with my daughter. I love
It's a
that a
good
lot.
one.
Um, was there ever a moment where you became angry or frustrated that your reputation was being impacted by something completely outside of your control? Was there ever a moment where you're like, maybe I will change my name?
No, I never for an instant thought about changing my name, but there were
Good.
plenty of moments where I was like, God, this is just
So annoying.
so annoying and relentless, because it
Yeah.
was at the front range of Twitter and social media,
Yeah.
which is now X, but and literally thousands of people a day were inviting me to spend eternity in hell.
Yes.
And so, then the trolls would come on, and it was a barrage. But the thing I worried most about was my family and how,
So your
how
poor
they felt
daughter,
about
no
it.
sleepovers, because at that time sleepovers were a thing. Probably none of that for your daughter. She's like, thanks,
Well,
Dad.
luckily my son had just gotten to, I think he was just about to high school. He was in high school
Yeah.
because I had coached his baseball teams all the way through grade school and middle school. And nobody's going to let Gerry Sandusky coach their kids' baseball team. They don't want
Right.
that. Like all those things became factors.
Oh,
And that, like the talk about the unfairness, but it just is what it is, and it's out of your control. So it just brings it back to the only thing you can control is how am I going to respond?
yeah.
And
Yes.
that can be a very lonely feeling, but you better be sure of what you stand for because ain't nobody standing with you in those moments but
Right.
yourself.
Right. That kind of brings me to my next question is looking back, and I feel like you kind of grew up in a family that was really resilient, really strong. But looking back, did that challenge reveal strengths in yourself that you didn't know that you had?
Yeah, I think so. I think life will always reveal those things to you. I didn't start off as a high school basketball player who thought, man, I can withstand the whole country throwing hate social media tweets at me. Like,
Right.
no, absolutely not. Yeah, you find much like parenthood teaches you things
Oh gosh,
you
yes.
didn't know you had, right?
Yeah.
Those moments teach you. But I think because I was a parent, it very much impacted the way I dealt with it because it wasn't just about me.
Right.
It wasn't just this selfish poor. If I had just been a single guy and that happened, I may have just, fallen into the cocoon of poor, pitiful me. This isn't fair,
Yeah,
but I couldn't. I was
they
a
were
parent.
watching.
I had it right. I had kids who were watching how I handled this, and they were going to remember that, and I knew that. And so it forced me to stretch myself beyond what I thought I could do and beyond what I thought I was, probably every day for a long time, until those things become who you are.
Parenthood does have a phenomenal way of keeping you in check in those moments because I have definitely had moments as a parent where I want to react to something in a certain way. And it's the knee jerk reaction where I want to be mad or I want to say something. And you stop and you have that pause, thank God. And they are that moment of clarity for you where you're like, all right, fast forward 16 years, they're in the same position. What would you want them to have the strength and the courage to say? That's what I need to say right now. So you're to your point about being a parent, it really does give you that pause that's helpful. If someone's identity is being defined by something they can't control, a rumor, a mistake, a circumstance, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, and look, let's be honest. As you raise children in the social media age,
Oh, the worst.
when I was in school, you had a class of 30 kids, and you had to worry about their opinions, and that would have. Well, no, kids today have to worry about the opinion of the world, and it's just
Yeah.
every eighth grader is dealing with the pressure of a supermodel. No, and it's so
That's
much harder on
AI
them.
probably, not even a
Yeah,
real supermodel anymore. It's a made
so
up one.
true. And so I think what we're talking about is, the journey is similar to what I've had to make and you've had to make and
Yeah.
others have to make. Our kids and our grandkids have to make those journeys younger.
Yeah.
They have to find that strength sooner.
Yeah.
They have to learn to lean on themselves faster at the expense of wanting the approval of others. And it's on a life dynamic. We all love this approval. We all
Yeah.
love this. So one of these that I teach in my seminars is a concept I call the 20-60-20 rule. 20% of the people in any audience, any classroom, any social setting are going to love you no matter what. Like, oh, I love the length of your hair. You remind me of
Right.
my favorite niece. And oh, you're wearing a Ravens jersey. I'm a Ravens fan. You can do no wrong. 20% of the people are just not going to connect with you for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Oh, the last guy I met with gray hair sideswiped my car. I hate people with gray hair. Or the dog they had for 10 years that they loved died the day before. And you're just not going to, 20% of the audience, you're just not going to reach.
Yeah.
It's the 60 in the middle you want to connect with. But the mistake we make, whether we're in eighth grade, whether we are a keynote speaker, whether we are a pro athlete, whether we're running a seminar,
Yeah.
is we get so obsessed with that 20% that's not connecting with us that we ignore the 80% that would connect with us if we gave
Yes.
them our full attention. So my advice to younger people is get past the idea that everybody's going to like you. They
Yeah.
won't.
Yeah.
Learn to like yourself. Learn to love yourself. Learn to find the things about yourself that are really, really great and special, and go all in on that. It might be your smile. It might be your ability to do card tricks. It might be your athleticism. It might be your ability to read. It might be your musical. Whatever that is, go all in on that, and know that 20% of the audience, no matter what, is just they're just going to be miserable, and that's
Yeah.
their problem, not your problem.
Right. It's such a testament to who they are. I just had that conversation with my daughter the other day because alarmingly, and I'm not a big social media person with my daughter. She's really not on her tablet very often. She's not getting on Google, not YouTube. Like I just and again, no judgment for the people that do that. But I really wanted to maintain some level of innocence for my daughter for as long as I could and protect her a little bit and put her in a bubble for a little bit from this world as long
Yeah.
as I could. But she's generally aware of the fact that if you post something on social media, there are likes, there are people that watch it, there are views, there are likes, there are comments. And I had posted something because, the podcast is something that she sees in production and I play things back for her. She had asked, how many likes did that one get? And I was immediately kind of heartbroken that that's what she associated anything to. And I said, Em, the funny part is, most of the people that will probably connect with this won't say a thing. They're not going to like it. And a lot of the people that do go out of their way to do the heart, they might actually be a little bit malicious about their intent too. Sometimes you'll get that where it's false support. And some of the people that support you the most are going to say nothing. So it's all a little bit of a lie in a way, but people are thriving on it. They are literally making decisions based on how many hearts they get on something, or
Yeah.
that one negative comment that they get from somebody who's threatened by what it is that they're doing. Maybe they executed on an idea that a person had, and that person's angry that they didn't do it first. It's not because what you're doing isn't great. It's because someone is jealous that they didn't do that great thing first. Um, so I had to have a conversation earlier than I thought I would need to with an 8-year-old about, this whole idea of associating what you're doing in your life with likes is the wrong one, because more often than not, you're going to get some people that really don't like what it is that you're doing, but they're not you. They're not living your life. So this has to be, are you the one putting the heart on the thing that you're doing? That really is all that matters. Forget about all the other hearts or comments or whatever it is that are out there, and she had a similar situation with a play. She had some friends that were commenting about her performance in a play. And I said, where were those people sitting? And she said, they were sitting in the stands. They weren't in the play. And I said, exactly. You're the brave one up on the stage doing it. So the ones that are in the stands are often the loudest because they don't have the guts to get on stage and do the thing that you're doing. So don't let that noise stop you from getting up on stage. Continue to do
People,
this thing
yeah,
you
people
love.
who have not done what you're doing are in no
Right,
position to evaluate what you're doing.
right.
But so your daughter on stage is a perfect example. 20% of the audience, when she walked out, she had them in her back pocket.
Yes.
20% of the audience, she could have been Barbara Streisand. It doesn't matter. They don't like her.
Yep.
And so that's the great example of learning how to deal with that. I had 420 some broadcasts as a Ravens broadcaster, and I enjoyed every one of them. It was such a special experience.
Yeah.
But if you went on social media after any one of them, you'd find the 20% who hated me. It's just
Right.
the way it is.
Somebody
You
will
can't
be
base
saying you
yourself
had a
on
booger in your nose or something, and you're like,
it. Right.
great, that's what you gathered from this entire.
Uh-huh. Now if it's Bob Costas or Jim Nantz or somebody giving you a critique, I'll listen to that because they're
Right,
by experience what I do. But if it's Nancy Jones or Bob Smith and they've never wore a headset and they've never had to call a game,
right.
you're entitled to your opinion, but I'm entitled not to absorb it.
Yeah. And we all do it. I mean, I notice it all the time. I'm always kind of internally giggling during the Olympics because we're all sitting on our couches watching Olympics, and all of a sudden, with this sport we have very minimal exposure to, except for this once every 4 years, we're all the experts. We're like,
Yeah,
God, how could they miss that cartwheel, or how could they not land that jump? We're not on the skis.
yeah.
We're not on the balance beam. What are we talking about? But we all do it as humans where, we feel the need to give feedback on this thing that we do not know. And it's hurtful to the people that are actually good at what they're doing.
And we didn't spend 18 years getting to that one moment,
Right.
feeling
What are
the
we doing?
pressure of that one moment,
Yeah.
knowing it took 18 years and a total sacrifice to get there. And like you said, we're on our couch.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. But every time I see it, I'm like, what are we doing as a society? Why aren't we all leaning behind these people to be like, God, can you imagine? And I look at it through a different lens now too, because before I had kids, I'm looking at them, at the athletes, and I'm like, wow, how cool it is to be an athlete, to do this hard thing. Now I'm like, wow, how proud their parents must be. So their parents now also hear that feedback and are like, somebody says, oh, she lost the gold for us. As a parent,
Uh,
if I heard that, oh, you know,
Mama bear.
yes. So
Yeah.
it's just, I always am it's funny to me during the
In,
Olympics
in
because
that parent
that's where
moment, you're going to have to remember my dad's advice. You can't punch all the jerks
yes,
without becoming the biggest
I know.
jerk.
I'm gonna have to just, all right. Want to get a little bit into resilience and character. You've covered athletes your entire life. Who taught you the most about resilience, not through what they said, but through how they lived?
Mostly coaches. I was mostly impressed with coaches over the years who could suffer just heart-wrenching losses.
Yeah.
Having grown up in a coach's family, I saw these are 80-hour work weeks,
Yeah.
100-hour work weeks, and
Yeah.
everything's poured into this 1 3-hour block on Sunday, and you lose that game, and basically all your work was for naught, it seems like.
Right.
And then the ability to wake up the next day and start the climb back up the next mountain and to lead, pro athletes with you.
Mhm.
I've just always been fascinated by that, especially when you lose a Super Bowl. When you
I
lose,
know.
my dad coached in 4 Super Bowls and lost 3 of them. And the ability to get up and go to the next season and to to shift your focus back to what matters and not just get caught up on the trophy, to me was a really powerful lesson of you have to love what I call the Monday through Saturday, not just the game day. It's easy to love Sunday. It's easy
Yeah.
to love a stadium of 70,000 people chanting your name. But you've got to earn that every week with the work you put in Monday through Saturday.
Yeah.
And people who most shine on Sunday are obviously given the God-given talent, but they do the most work, whether it's
Yeah.
Jerry Rice or Ray Lewis or Joe Montana or Johnny Unitas or LeBron James or pick your favorite superstar. They do the most work.
Yeah.
They outwork everybody.
Yeah.
And they outwork everybody when they're not in the spotlight.
Yeah.
So to me, that was always the resilience of getting to see what their life was like outside of that 3 hour block, that 1 hour block, wherever the spotlight was. That's what I look for in people. It's like, what are
Mhm.
you doing when nobody's looking your way?
Yeah.
And that's what separates the greats from the good from the average.
When you really have to love who you're becoming and who your players are becoming in pursuit of that thing, regardless of whether or not you get it. Like I think that's the
Yeah.
part that they really have to be passionate about and enjoy is what you get to teach people, what you get to learn, who you get to become, regardless of how this thing plays out. Because otherwise, the wins and the losses would crush you.
And
But
and
I
I've
think,
I've seen it crush some people. I mean,
yeah,
I have seen it crush people. And here's the thing: the people it crushes, you don't necessarily see it up front. Occasionally, there's Olympic moments, you'll see the pressure get to an athlete,
yep,
but over the long term, they just disappear.
yeah,
It just they no longer wanted the work of Monday through Saturday.
yeah,
It's not just the Sunday pressure. It's that treadmill of get back on it, get back on it, get back on it, because
mhm,
every sport has a cycle. And
yeah,
you've got to be able to go through that cycle, whether it's running a marathon, running an ultra marathon, prepping a football
yeah.
game, playing volleyball, whatever. There's a cycle and a season, and most of the cycle and most of the season is work outside the spotlight.
Yes. And a lot of us are putting in that work just to be average, and that's okay. But I'm like, God, it is really hard to just show up and perform as an average athlete because I'm a competitive runner and I do. I every day it's you get up on the treadmill, you get up and you log the miles, and it's to be that 1% that's actually professional in it and elite in it. God, it's got to be hard because it's really hard to be average.
Honestly, not having had the gear, what I call the gear, the special gene that makes you a one
Right.
percenter, I don't think it's any different for a one percenter and an average. Because to
Yeah.
be a one percenter and be great, you still have to push yourself beyond your comfort levels constantly,
Yeah.
just like an average person does.
Yeah.
They're relative to their talent, they're not outworking you in terms of pushing the envelope. They're just outperforming everybody because they're pushing the envelope and because at that 1%
Right.
level, they're outworking the one percenters.
Yeah.
I saw something once
Yeah.
that said, lions don't evaluate themselves by what mules are doing.
Good point.
And so, the lions are the 1%. They're evaluating themselves based on what the other lions are doing. They're outworking the other lions. The 1%, they don't
Yeah.
care about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Ironically, you're essentially doing the same thing they're doing. You just have a different DNA set.
Yeah. And I think
Success is all the same formula. It's pushing yourself. It's taking sensible breaks when you need them, but it's growing and maximizing whatever ability you have. We all have different abilities in
yeah.
different areas.
And what's the conversation you're having with yourself in that state of failure? Because I think that's really what determines who's going to win and who's going to lose is like who's
Oh,
the one that's able to have the stronger conversation with themselves when they're at a state of complete and utter failure, where everything's telling them to give up. What's the thing they tell themselves to get up?
and look, failure is a two-sided coin. Failure can either be your judge or your teacher, and the
Yeah.
choice is yours.
Yes. So true. Um, let's see. When life delivers a setback you didn't deserve, what does accountability look like for someone?
I think that's your choice. It's what's your locus of control?
Yeah.
When you're delivered a setback, the first thing you have to ask yourself is what was my role in it?
Yep.
Sometimes, the Gerry Sandusky thing, there was no role. But then my role is, okay, how am I responding to this? I think you have to start from that sense of responsibility of What's my role? What's my responsibility?
Yeah.
Because life's going to hand you setbacks. I don't care who you are.
Yep.
Life will hand you setbacks. And if your initial reaction is all, well, that's their problem. That's because the Democrats did this. That's because the Republicans do that. That's because wealthy people do this, or people in Texas like you've already lost.
Yeah.
If all of it is out there, you've already lost because you've literally surrendered control in the first second. You have to ask yourself, all right, what could I do differently? What was my role in creating this situation? And what's my responsibility now? And I think if you keep going back to that simple formula, you'll navigate what comes. It doesn't make it easy, right? It's not going to
No.
make it comfortable.
Nope.
It's not going to make it fun, but you'll not only navigate it for yourself, but you'll navigate it for everybody else who's looking for guidance and looking at you while you navigate it.
Yeah. You had that one conversation with your dad that sat with you for your entirety of life afterward about being punched, punching the people that don't necessarily support you. But I had one that landed with me with my dad, and it was you can't adjust the wind, but you can adjust your sails. And that was
Yeah,
really kind of how I tried to navigate my life. I didn't always do well
sure.
with
No,
it, but it was something
none of
that
us
I
are
had to
perfect.
have in the back of my mind where I'm like, this is the direction of the wind, and I have no way to be able to change that, but I can change the direction of my sails and how I'm going to navigate this thing. Because a lot of the times, I would say maybe even more often than not, the wind isn't going to blow in your direction. So how are you going to react to that?
Yeah.
Um, all right. I'm
You
gonna
can't control how the wind blows.
no, especially in Maryland. We all know that now. Gosh. I want to get into a shared career that we both have, and that's the executive coaching piece. A lot of people aren't aware, but you do a sales training and also executive coaching for folks now. So you've spent your career around elite performers from NFL players to coaches to executives. What made you decide that executive coaching was the next chapter for you?
So, like a lot of things in life, it was kind of an accident. My business, I'm an accidental businessman. It just
Yeah.
started because as a sportscaster, I went to a million banquets.
Yep.
And I would see a lot of people who I knew they were really good at what they did, but they'd get in front of an audience and really struggle and look like they weren't good at what they did. They were
Right.
literally damaging their brand.
Yep.
And because their performance in front of audiences did not match their excellence at what they did. And so it created this imbalance between perception and reality.
Mhm.
Perception is not reality, but in a society like ours where people are time poor, perception carries the initial weight. And if it doesn't align with reality, we never experience a reality because we presume off of perception. We act on
Yep.
perception. And so gradually I started to help some people who had to do a TV interview. I helped them kind of create some media coaching. And then that grew into a small business. And then I got into organizations and I realized only the top tier need media coaching, but usually large swaths of people need presentation skills coaching.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the pandemic happened and everybody had to do Zoom. And Zoom is nothing but being on television, which I did for
Yeah.
40 years. And so I carved out a niche in the three areas where people are most uncomfortable. I call it the room, the Zoom, and the camera.
Love
And
that.
I just showed people how to be more comfortable, how to be more themselves in these uncomfortable environments. And what I discovered was it gives them a competitive advantage. It level sets the perception with their reality, but it also eliminates a lot of the competition because a lot of people don't like being in front of the room, the
Right.
Zoom, the camera, so they don't show up. If you keep showing up and they don't show up, you're going to win. I don't care what sport you're
Yeah.
playing.
Well, now I'm going to need all of your feedback on how I show up over Zoom.
You're doing great.
I'm going to have to do the follow-up after and be like, how'd I do? Um, a lot of people think that coaching is something that you need when you're struggling. This is something that I deal with a lot with folks in my realm. But in your experience, who benefits the most from executive coaching?
So I have a model and I call it the leadership line. And if you think of a triangle and think of your entry level job,
Yep.
well, you get that entry level job because you can do the job, whether that is, processing data, whether that's doing the books, whether that's being a marketing rep, whether that's creating the social media posts. And then you rise up to the managerial level where you're managing other people who are doing that, and that's a different skill set. And then you cross what I call the visible line, the leadership line. Once you're above the leadership line, everybody in the organization and in the marketplace sees you.
Yeah.
And the direct tell is your picture shows up on the website.
Yeah.
Once you're visible, it's a different skill set that will elevate your career from that point forward. You have to have financial acumen, you have to have vision, you have to have communication skills, and you have to establish yourself as a brand. As you rise closer to the CEO level, you won't have the same technical skill set that you had as an entry
Right.
level employee.
Because you're just
And the
not in
mistake I
it.
find most people make is they're above the leadership line, but they're still talking about the entry level technical stuff when they're in front of the room, the Zoom, and the camera.
Yep.
Leaders have to talk about direction, not just the 63 turns you take to get there. Leaders have to establish a vision. Well, people can't follow a vision that isn't established. And so, as you cross, who we focus on are people who are crossing into the leadership line and above the leadership line to work on those four skill sets, primarily three, because we don't do much in the way of financial acumen.
Right.
That's a different arena, but we're all about improving your communication skills, developing your vision, and becoming a brand. And so we do that because once you have a leader who has those skills, they'll absolutely stand apart from the leaders who don't.
Oh, sure. The brand piece is huge.
Yes.
Um, if someone's listening, and I know we have to wrap, so I want to get all of the important stuff in quickly here. But if someone listening is on the fence about hiring a coach, because I've had a lot of that where people are kind of hesitant to invest in themselves, they don't necessarily know the benefit. But what's the strongest case you'd make for investing in that kind of growth?
Where you want to go? Do you
Right.
want to just stay where you are,
Yep.
or do you want to regress? Because if you don't invest in yourself, you will stay where you are, or as the world progresses, you'll regress.
Yep.
And if you think about it, every great performer had a coach. Tiger Woods had a swing coach. Jack Nicklaus had a swing coach.
Or many coaches. A lot of the
Many,
time they have
exactly,
many, depending on what it
multiple
is they're
coaches.
sharpening, you know?
Because they give you 360 feedback. They can see you from
Yep.
different angles. And so if you really want to keep growing, you're going to need it. It's not should I invest in a coach, it's which coach should I invest in? That's the real question. You
Yeah.
can't get there by yourselves. We've talked about earlier. Business and life and sports, they're team sports.
Yep.
You cannot get there by yourself. Even tennis and golf, which are individual sports, are team sports because you have a community around you, have coaches around you. So the question isn't, should I invest in a coach? If you want to work above the leadership line, the question is, which coach should I invest in? And it
Yes,
should be a
absolutely.
coach that has the skills that you're looking to acquire. Like I said, if you want to do a better job of reading balance sheets, I am not your coach.
No.
But if you want
Neither
to,
am
if you
I,
want to
anyone.
Right. If you want to master becoming a brand, developing your communication skills, and, developing and delivering a vision that will have a profound impact on your career and your organization, and you can do it across multiple platforms, the room, the Zoom, and the camera, I'm your coach.
Yes, I'm biased, but I absolutely believe that anyone and everyone can benefit from a coach. I didn't notice as big of a shift in my life as I did until I went from investing in a therapist to investing in a coach. And it was exponential how much more I was able to execute by having somebody in my corner that reminded me who I was when I forgot, and that's
Yeah.
a lot of the time what it is. Um, you've built a remarkable career overcoming challenges that weren't of your making, helped countless people through your work, and now you're entering this new season as a grandfather. The microphone's off, the games are over. So when you look at the road ahead, what legacy are you still trying to build?
I think the same one my dad taught me. Be a good person, do the right thing, believe in yourself, keep growing, keep going, stand up to adversity. When you get knocked over, find a way to get back up, keep going, and keep believing that tomorrow could be a little bit better because of the work you put in today.
Yes, I love it. Gerry, it has been such an honor to be able to share a little piece of your story. I feel like we're really just at the top of the iceberg here with your story, but to be able to share even just a part of it has been an absolute honor. I thank you for spending the time with us today, and I look forward to hopefully having you on again in the future. But cheers to your next chapter. As somebody who has grown up, listening to you, and you are the voice of the Ravens, we thank you for all the work you've put in. You are the Ravens. So thank you for that, and cheers to your next chapter, whatever that looks like for you.
Laura, thank you so much. It's been a real honor to be with you today.
Thank you. I'm your host, Laura Reynolds, signing off for the Grid Files.